Zeliff Farms.
So we farm up in Orleans, Niagara County, and I'm going to sit down because I have to do things on my computer, but we started really looking at regenerative ag back in 2015.
Put the mic up closer to your.
Hear me now? Okay, sorry. I don't do a lot of public speaking, so I don't know how to use a microphone. But, so in 2015, started looking at regenerative farming practices, just kind of as an interest. Didn't really do anything a whole lot with it. Just kind of started studying it, looking at things, and really it took till a huge failure in 2017 that I'll show you in a few minutes. That really kind of forced our hands in some of that stuff. But I always like this saying, mistakes are proof that you're trying. I could probably talk to you longer about mistakes than successes we've had, because we've tried a lot of different things. But you know, you definitely have failed at a lot of things to find the things that are working for us right now. And another thing is that, you know, I've also in our group with Randy Dowdy and Dave Hula, which I see they just announced. Hula just did 602 bushel again this year. They always start every meeting out with "there is no silver bullet." So guys that even go talk to those guys that are looking for that, what's that one thing that can get us over the top? There is no one thing. It's really attention to detail. I think Steve's touched on some of the just the management of the crops is really important. So there's a number of things. So there's not one thing, but so in a lot of the products that we use, so we actually, every pass across the field, we're feeding the soil biology. So we haven't been successful at cover crops. And we were trying cover crops and just couldn't really get them consistently to work on every acre every year, so we were looking for something else. We started with a program with AEA. John Kempf is the founder of AEA. Huge knowledge. Guys, listen to any of his stuff. Really interesting guy. But we use products like fish oil, sugars, molasses, humic and fulvic acids, kelp, mycorrhizal fungi, and sea minerals. So again, every pass we're going across the field, we're feeding the soil biology. But at planting, we use a product called Biomax that we make on our farm, which is a compost tea extract. And that's going in at planting, in furrow. That's kind of the basis of our, or the foundation of our program is the Biomax that we're producing. And you know, I think with anything, the cover crops, whatever you're doing, it's all about diversity. We used to be just a corn and bean rotation. We just added snap beans and wheat just so that we could get more diversity. And then after wheat, we get a nice 9-way cover crop in, and then we'll kind of build off of that. Everything else, every year we try to get a cover crop on. Some years we do, some years we don't. This year, really wet where we are in the fall. Hardly got any cover crop on. All of our wheat acres did though, so that's the thing. But again, it's about feeding your biology all year long. You can't just put a biological product out there and expect that it's just going to do wonders. So it's really feeding that biology. A lot of guys have heard sugars, and I don't know if anybody's using sugars. Sugars are great, but sugar is only feeding your bacteria. And really what we need to do is increase the fungi in our soils. That's where our fish oils and stuff comes in. The product that we start with is Biomax. So it has over 4,000 species of bacteria, fungi, nematodes, protozoa, other biology. And our of that, this is a sample taken with a biometer. If anybody's looking to measure their soil biology or anything like that, a couple $100. Great tool to have on your farm if you're looking into regenerative ag. 64% of what we're putting down is fungi. An ideal soil has a 1-to-1 bacteria to fungi ratio. Most of our soils today are 80 bacteria to 1 fungi, and that 1 fungi you have is probably one that you don't want. So getting our soils back to a fungi bacteria ratio is one of the important parts, and that's really where our Biomax comes into play with putting all these fungi out there and helping to help those fungi grow each year. We also put mycorrhizal fungi on our seed at planting. And these are all those practices that, you're trying to protect that fungi. But if you don't have living roots in the soil during the winter, most of your fungi is going to die off over the winter up here because it's so cold. So that's where cover crops are a huge, important role of keeping that alive. But the main reason we went to this compost extract is because every year we know we're getting all the biology out there all the time. Nematodes, so there are nematodes in our product. Everybody's probably like, oh wow, you're putting out nematodes, those are bad. Well, nematodes are actually one of the most beneficial soil microorganisms we have. Just there's bad ones and there's good ones. So the good guys eat the bad guys, and that's a lot of our saying with our product is you fight the bad guys with the good guys. And a lot of the stuff that we have between the nematodes and the fungi and the bacteria, they will fight off the bad ones. The makeup of the compost that we make the product out of, that's really the key. There's certain ingredients that have to go in there so that you are getting the right ratios of what you're doing. Everybody's seen, I call bugs in the jug, that you can buy on the shelf. There's some good ones. Most of those products are all bacteria. You can't get the fungi to live in without oxygen. So most of those products are all bacteria based. I think the most I know that has 80 species in one jug, and that's all bacteria, no fungi in that either. Even the product we make, every 12 hours we have to irrigate it to keep everything alive in it. The product we're making on the farm, if you put it in a jug, 12 hours it would be dead. So I know years ago, I forgot which university actually did a study of jug products, and something like 43% of the jug products they tested were dead when they arrived at the farm. So you were just really putting nothing on at that time. So this is us making, this is the compost extract that we're making right in here. Goes through this process for over 4 hours. There's the compost that we're using to make it. So that you can make 500 gallons in about 4 to 5 hours, and that's enough for 100 acres. So we'll usually make a batch of 2 batches a day, 1,000 gallons, and that gives us enough for about 200 acres. And it's tricky. You gotta, like I said, every 12 hours you gotta aerate it. It's not an easy process. It's not a back of the tractor trailer load of fertilizer up and put it in the tank and use it all spring. So there's management that takes place to go through that. But other things that we've implemented on the farm, the steps towards regenerative farming is reduce or eliminate tillage. Vertical till is what works best for us. We can't get no-till right now to work consistently for us. With vertical till, we're still seeing increased organic matter. We try to no-till as much as we can, but just our soils are heavy and wet. And sometimes we need the vertical till tool to dry them out, and we have less slug issues when we run the vertical till over it. Reduce or eliminate the use of Roundup or Liberty. Roundup is also very detrimental to soil biology. Liberty is really a cousin of Roundup. They're both pretty bad. So we've done the best we can. We still use about 22 ounces post. We use Gramoxone free, which, I don't know, you stopped spraying Roundup and now you're using a container that has skull and crossbones on it. So are we doing any better? I don't know. But it's what we're working with right now. Another thing with Roundup, though, is Roundup's shown to tie up manganese in the soil. Manganese helps the plant's immunity system fight off disease and everything else. So you're tying up the manganese in the soil, the plant's not getting it. Well, the plant don't have manganese in it, guess who else isn't getting it? Whoever's consuming that plant, whether it be animals, us as humans. We could probably get on a huge political rant about COVID right now and why they haven't implemented better diets and nutrition and stuff like that instead of a vaccine, but we'll skip over that right now. But you know, manganese is something that is missing in a lot of foods right now, and it's mainly tied back to Roundup that's tying it up in the soil. We started putting manganese in anytime we used Roundup. You guys know how after you sprayed beans with Roundup, they look like you about killed them for a week. They turn yellow and you just don't look good. Put a quart of manganese in, that don't happen. And those beans will stay green and keep growing. And, it's because of the manganese tie-up that you're fighting in that. So we apply biologicals throughout the year, but also feed biologicals throughout the year. We do use Sap Analysis to reduce fertilizer inputs and let the biology go to work. And stop using potassium chloride, try to use sulfate of potash instead. The thing with potash is, you know, it's a chloride. So what does chloride do? It sanitizes everything. As potash starts to dissolve, it creates a sulfide gas, or chloride gas, and that gas is heavier than oxygen, so that gas just stays right on the surface of the soil. You're killing off your biology every time you put out potash. You know, there's some places where it's needed, but if you can use sulfate of potash, you don't have those issues. Implementing cover crops, obviously. Reduce or eliminate chemicals, fungicides. Steve had this on his slide. I actually had it on one of mine. Is stop using the sides. Anything you can do, anything that says side on it, it's not beneficial to our soil biology. Everything we do adds to or takes away from what we're trying to accomplish. And sides are one of those things. Every time it's on there, it's taken away from what we're trying to accomplish. And obviously, some of these practices are easier to implement than others. You know, I haven't been able to consistently do everything that we want every year. You know, we tried to eliminate tillage. We got a lot of cornfields we went through this year. They're going to get a disc next spring because we rutted them up during harvest, and you know, it's just unfortunately where we live and what we have to deal with. So this is the field 2017. Typically, this field got 200 pounds of potash every year, 100 pounds of MAP, and 200 pounds of nitrogen. I'd like to say that this yield down here was our great soybean yield, 98 bushels. That was actually our corn yield that year. It was a wet year. There was also, part of it was there was a variety of corn in there that was new to New York that year that probably should have never came to New York. But this was kind of like our year of, this isn't working, we got to do something else. So the next year, no fertilizer, went to an AEA meeting and started using AEA products on this field. This was our first year using it, put soybeans in there. And 60 bushel beans first year that we applied using an AEA program, which is pretty much, most of it's just feeding soil biology. There wasn't a whole lot of biology we were putting out there, but it's mainly just feeding it. The bottom of this field is one of those fields you never want to go in and work in it. It turns into marbles. You'll never get it to plant well. We always fight the bottom of this field. There's a culvert that runs underneath the road over here. The neighbor's field drains into it. It just takes a lot of water on. But we were pretty pleased with that. One of the things that we really liked is that spider mites were bad that year. We had beans in the field next to it, and using an AEA program, we held spider mites off for probably almost 2 weeks before they got into this field when they were in the field right on the other side of the laneway. So that was kind of one of those things that we were seeing results, and we were pretty happy with what we're doing. So 2019, we decided, let's keep going down this. No fertilizer, applied again, planted it to corn. So field average in this field, if you took the history of that field, was 146 bushel. So that year, we averaged 164. Oh, the average before that was 146. That year we averaged 164. So nothing great, nothing to, like, we're not winning any yield contest in this field, but we made improvements. So we're like, okay, let's see what we can continue to do with this. So next year, 2020, same thing, no fertilizer. Remember that failure thing? I went to, it was a meeting here, I can't remember if it was Corn Congress, last time Steve was here. We were talking about slugs. We always fight slugs when we no-till. And we talked about getting rid of treated seeds. So the easiest thing for us to not get treated seed was soybeans. So I went with all naked beans across the whole farm. Didn't try one field, tried the whole farm. Major failure. Average 49 bushel. But if you look at this field, obviously you can see down here is the poor soils that we always fight. Up here where our good soils are, they're still averaging 70 bushel beans, untreated seeds, completely naked seeds. So in the back of my mind, a lot like what Steve had talked about, is that eventually the soils will get there, that you'll be able to do this type of stuff, just got to stick with it. And it was just too early for us to do that. You can obviously just see where we had problems. But it wasn't horrible bad, but obviously it wasn't what we were hoping for. So this year came around, back to corn. So this would be the 4th year of this being a regenerative program. Field next to it was still our conventional program, and we wanted to try something different. So we tried putting biologicals on this field next to it. So in the field that's been in this for a while, same program that we've been using, no fertilizers. Our corn yield, 186. So when we started this program, field average in that field was 146. So basically increased bushels, average in that field, 40 bushels an acre over the years. But you can look at that map and you can just kind of see how it's starting to become more uniform. What we've seen in a biological program is your top end yield isn't going to go up, but your farm average is going to go up because it's those bad areas that you're having a hard time with that are going to start to yield and get better. So we were really happy with that. Field directly across the laneway here. Same year. So the history on this field is actually a little bit worse. This says it was 153. Before that year, the field average was actually 142. So it was actually 4 bushel less than the field next to it that we started. It had still been in a conventional program. First year that we applied a biological to it and a full regenerative program. $184. So actually increased that field average in 1 year, 42 bushel in 1 year. And I think adding the biologicals up front just sped that whole program, where the other program we were just feeding the biology every year, so we were kind of like trying to influence the biology that was native to the soils, to where the Biomax product that we're making, you're putting all that biology out of there. We like to call it a cover crop in a barrel. you're just getting all those benefits from there. And to me, really the regenerative program is about building organic matter and then using that organic matter to feed your plants. And that's what we've really kind of been going. So we've been happy with that. 2020 would have actually been the first year we had used it on all of our corn in 2020. And it was the first year we had a farm average over 200 bushel corn across the whole farm. We've never had a farm average that high. This year we would have been over that. We had some fields that we knew were going to kind of ding us, and towards the end of the year it brought us down, but we were 186 average across the whole farm this year. So that was huge improvements for us, just from what we've seen over the years, and it's been working. 2020, show you another soybean field that we had. For 2021, so this field passed average for soybeans. .48 bushel. You can kind of see where your yield is here. But then this field averaged 70 bushel this year. And you can just see the consistency of the field. It's those low bottom, the not productive portions of the field that are turning and coming around. Again, and that's just what we're seeing is it's not the program that you're going to win the contest with, but it's the one that's going to make you the most money across the farm because your overall average is going to be up higher across the farm. I wanted to show you something else in our wheat that we did, talking about sap analysis. We sat sap analysis every field across the farm. Lori sitting back there was educated this year on taking sap analysis, and if you're going to get into it, I'd suggest you get somebody like crop management to do it for you, because I tried doing it the year before myself, and you get so frustrated because there's key timings, and it's not just like taking a tissue sample. There's a specific way it has to be done at a certain time. It is time consuming, so either just pick a field or get somebody to take the samples for you. But Lori was scouting our wheat, and she came back with a recommendation to us. There was cereal leaf beetle in there, and she wanted us to spray Warrior on it to kill the beetles. Again, not wanting to use the side, we took our sap analysis and we made an application. You can see we were short on boron and copper. And we also have another project called Pixie Dust, which actually helps increase the silicon. But you can already see our silica was already very high in the plant. Another thing that silica can show you is that your biology is working in the soil. It's another indicator. But, so we knew we had good silica, but silica hardens the cell walls on the outsides of the plant, which makes it harder for the insects to actually penetrate the cell walls. So basically an insect will come down and try to take a bite of it, and be like, oh, this is too hard, I'm moving on to something easier, and they'll move to the next field. But we made this application, boron, copper, pixie dust, and Lori came back the next week, and the recommendation came back, no insect pressure. And I think she even said there was ladybugs in the field when she did scouting. So we were able to not make an insecticide application. That probably would have killed off the ladybugs, which were beneficial as well. And I just feel like these are the right things to do instead of going out there and spraying insecticides and stuff. Another thing on that sap analysis is looking at the nitrogen that we talked about a little bit earlier. You can see the total nitrogen we were actually really high on total nitrogen, which isn't horrible bad. We were low on nitrate and ammonium, which is good because you don't want those ones. When those are high, insects detect that as well, and they can detect those high nitrate levels, and that's what attracts them to the plant. plants as well, but when your total nitrate's up there, that's not what the insects are looking for. It doesn't attract them to those plants. We do test plots every year, 20 to 30 varieties on our fields. They had put it in a nice graph for this year, so this is last year's. This is at a seeding rate of 32,200 pounds of nitrogen, straight across the board. Highest yield, 256. You can see these are all well over 200 bushel corn, down into some really 85-day corn. And we always try to look at where that yield break is. And we're trying to plant that really some maturing varieties, trying to get those cover crops on. We're trying to find that window where we're not losing yield as well. This was last year's plot. Winter was 256. Soybeans last year, same thing, trying to find the same thing in those soybean varieties. I think our winter was this NK at 73 bushel per acre. So we're starting to see that stuff, move out into our fields, pull the data from our test plots. And we're doing all this, increasing our yields on our farm, at the same time reducing all of our inputs. Our average seeding rate for corn this year was 28,000, over 200 bushel. Nitrogen, we don't put anything more than 200 pounds on. We're trying to pull that back each year. I think our average was maybe a total of 180 pounds across the farm. So we're trying to pull that back as we go. It was an interesting, we did a nitrogen trial a few years ago. We didn't have time to replicate it this year. But 2019, with our nitrogen, so this one we're side dressing a field. You can see the passes. So we put down 50 pounds of nitrogen at planting, and the rest is all side dressed. We purposely left the pass out. So where we didn't side dress was only 50 pounds of nitrogen, and the rest had a total of 180, so we would side dress another 120 pounds. So each pass, here you got 180 bushel, 185, 156, 153, and back over 180. So yeah, the additional 130 pounds of nitrogen we got a response from, and we grew 156 bushel corn on 50 pounds of nitrogen. So when you're looking at efficiencies, that 150 bushel corn, given what nitrogen prices are today, that might make us more money than coming in side dressing and getting another 30 bushel. So it's things like that that you start to look at, just efficiencies. And we didn't do as much. I tend to do too many trials every year and not follow through on them. So this year I tried to cut back on trials, and the nitrogen one was just one we didn't do this year. But we need to do some more. Regenerative farming is all about diversity, diversity of plants growing, diversity of biology. It used to be, like I said, strictly corn bean. We added other crops to our rotations just to get more diverse. I think the next opportunity for us is returning animals to the ground. We just started getting the beef animals. We would like to raise our cover crops, or at least get manure out on fields, because I think that's going to be the next stop. Again, it's going to make that diversity of biology even better. But I really think that our biggest opportunity is for vegetable growers, is growing nutrient-dense foods. And like I said, given everything we've done for the last 2 years, our food is not as nutritious as it used to be. That's not what we get paid on. We get paid on pounds, so that's what everybody's focused on. But I do truly believe that food can be grown as a medicine, and that the future should be food that is more nutritious. It's going to last longer. There's just so many benefits to it. We just got to get the right people involved in that conversation of what that can be, what that can look like. I went and listened to Graham Sate. He's out of Australia. He's got a podcast called Nutritional Farming. And I went and listened to him. He has a 40-hour course you take. And the one aha moment I had is, he says, the Brontosaurus was one of the largest dinosaurs that ever walked this planet. It had the mouth the size of a horse. How do you get that much food to pass through that size of a mouth to feed a 62-ton animal? He didn't have to pass as much food through his mouth because all the food that animal was eating had so much nutrition in it because we as humans hadn't screwed the world up yet. So, and that was kind of one of my things. And my youngest son is into dinosaurs, and it wasn't really still, I started looking at all these dinosaurs, and man, they are these big, huge animals, and they all have these little tiny mouths. And, it really kind of struck home with me when we looked at that. So I think that's really could be one of the keys for agriculture in the future is getting, markets into nutrient-dense food. I know they're working on an app for a phone that can take a picture of a food and somehow tell you how nutrient-dense that food is. And I think that's going to be huge when that comes around. Kind of like Steve said, farming with nature. Have you noticed that every new chemical, every new trait, they just keep coming out with more and more? Mother Nature just keeps finding a way around it. How much longer are we going to fight her? Why don't we go back to things that we know work alongside nature? And the bills are just going to keep going higher and higher every year because now you got to add this, you got to add this, you got to add that. We haven't used fungicides, other than our seed treatments. We don't have any diseases. Even our wheat, we didn't spray any fungicide on. Didn't have any issues in our wheat this year. There's different ways around it. Is it harder? Yeah. Is it not as convenient? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I really feel it's what's the right thing to do, and I also feel that in the long run, our soils are going to be so much healthier down the road because of this. I don't want to feel like I'm becoming Don Bratton here and just going to keep rambling on all afternoon. So I can talk about regenerative ag and soil health for days. It's really become a passion of mine. I'm really interested in helping other people down the path. We've partnered with AgriBiosystems to make these products and stuff, so they're available to everybody. If anybody is interested in learning more about it and wants to get more in depth, if you want to come see me afterwards, and I'd love to create another conference just to talk about what we're doing and our programs and approaches and things like that. So if you have interest in it, come and see me.